All right, welcome in the Bobby Carpenter Show. It is Thursday, November 7th, Schlegs, first Thursday of the month. Ready to get rolling with the big can of polish on. We got Purdue this weekend. We got Ben Stevens on later today. We had a great little episode yesterday with our guy, AJ Hawk. If you missed it, head back and watch it. We're live every day at noon right here on the YouTube machine, also streaming on X. So listen, give us the likes, some follows. Tell your friends about it, Schleiks. I mean, let's let the folks know, and always leave your comments in there. Please subscribe as we try to get this thing rolling in a big way. I want to start out with this. I was listening to Ryan Day. He does his coach's show each and every Thursday. You can hear it live across the Ohio State Sports Network with Learfield throughout the state. Locally in Columbus, Ohio, it's on 97.1 The Fan. Paul Keels, Jim Lachey, they do a great job with it. And Ryan was on there, and one of the things they were talking about, Schleigs, and this was always what's really interesting. And Ryan was talking about the energy, the passion. Dude's getting juiced up. He brought up Jelani Thurman, calling it on fourth down. He goes, I've got Jack Sawyer, Jack and Jermaine screaming in my ear, go for it, meaning Jermaine Matthews, Jack Sawyer. There's so much juice. We run a little boot to Jelani, looking, I believe it was Quinshawn in the flat. They don't see him. I think it's G on the drag. Jelani's like the third option. Will buys time, gets him. He has 3 catches, 3 drops. I guess 4 catches, 3 drops, all on one play. Ryan's like, it's the longest play of my life. But everybody's there like screaming and yelling, like a lot of passion. He's like, no, that's Buckeye football. And listening to that, talk about the passion and the intensity, something that we talked about. And this is the first time Ryan has spoke about it a lot. But when you give yourself time, it gives you perspective of understanding the gravity of that moment, the situation. And then part and parcel with that, I want to start with this. So you've got that intensity right there, the defense cheering on the offense cheering on the defense, guys that are invested in the game, going back and forth. And that's what you love, showing that passion, that energy. And listen, folks, sometimes it's going to be easier than others. There's going to be games where, given the fact you're playing a great opponent in a hostile environment, that's naturally going to lend itself to a lot of juice. Now, for the leaders, it's how do you manufacture that when maybe it's not quite there. Maybe it's a slow start, a noon game. Maybe you're playing an opponent that isn't quite as good, and maybe it's a little sluggish at the beginning. Like, how do you find a way to amplify your teammates and to make sure that you're ready to go and everybody else around you is ready to go, and understanding the crowd will feed off of your energy before you probably start feeding off of theirs. And then the next piece of that is you talk about like the unselfish nature of guys. And there was an attitude around the team last week. Like you can kind of see it. And going and watching Inside Drill this week, which is always my favorite, as you talked about. We discussed earlier, like it's the most intense period of the week. Inside, it's all run, linebackers, D-line, safety against running backs, tight ends, and O-line. And it's just get after it. And lots of physicality. So you watch that. But that last week, you just feel that there's some juice. And there was a player who scored a touchdown in the game. And, a young player, a freshman, not maybe the most heralded guy out there, especially when you start talking about J.J. Smith and everything he brings to the table. But Brendan Ennis. And Ryan talked about Brendan Ennis going up, during the week. And he goes, he's a high energy guy, high motor guy. He's always got it. And he's going to have a lot of great plays at Ohio State. Right now, they've got a lot of great receivers. And so he gets on the field, but maybe he doesn't make quite as many big plays or have as many splash catches. But he does it in other ways. And he went up, they said to Chip and to Hart, and hey, tell me how I can help in this game. What can I do to be involved? And they're like, dude, the guy's always bringing energy. So he's like, you see him out there on the field, blocking his butt off. He'll motion, he'll shift. He's running every route as hard as he can, even if he knows, given the coverage and situation, he might not be the primary read. But he's still not getting as many reps because he's backing up essentially Emeka Egbuka in the slot. And they move guys around, but he's backing up Mech. You got Carnell Tate, you've got JJ. So he doesn't get all of the reps, Schlegs. And unbelievable testament. And Ryan, and about this, Urban talked about it, the competitive excellence, being ready when your number's called. And so on that touchdown, Schlegs, where they run the play action and Brandon sneaks back through. They catch it as run after catch, runs in for a touchdown. Ryan's like, he asked what he could do. He's blocking his butt off everything. He was in the play in the game on that given play. He's like, Chip saw him in there, called it with confidence. He goes, I don't think that he had ran that play as a full speed rep in practice. Maybe he'd hit it on a walkthrough. Maybe we'd watched it on film. We had talked about it, but 𝗟𝗡𝗩 had gotten most of those reps. He goes, and so that is a testament for a guy to be ready as a young player when your number is called and the opportunity is given to you. Are you going to be ready to go? In a huge moment, a turning point in the game, will you be ready, or will you be a slap that wasn't really paying attention, not really locked in because, quote, I'm not in the play, so I'm not really paying as much attention, as opposed to being locked in and saying, 𝗟𝗩𝗡𝗑 is a great receiver. How does he run this? How does he do this? And when I get in there, I may not get a practice rep, but when I get in there, I'm going to be ready to go. Being ready when your opportunity was called. And that, to me, when I heard Ryan say, I was like, that is awesome. Because I thought something that may have scripted up and designed for him to be a part of it. Because Schlegel, he's a high energy guy. Like, we're going to get him involved, and not just in blocking and route running, but we're going to get something designed to go to his position. And hearing that from Ryan, saying that he probably didn't get a full speed practice rep. Talk about culture, you talk about guys that are difference makers. That, to me, epitomizes what you want to have out there.
Yeah, 100%. And Bob, I appreciate that rant because it automatically spurred thoughts of Kenny Guyton. Kenny Guyton was that kind of guy. Like, even right now, when I'm talking to kids, working with junior high football, working with baseball, like being able to work the game is what Urban called it. So that, and OG says this, so that you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the point. And then when your number is called, you can go make the play. And we saw this in a lot of different instances. Carson Hintzman, that type of performance. Donnie moving over to positions, that type of performance. Brandon Ennis in this case, also sophomore. And I'm going to give you a nugget on Brandon Ennis.
Oh, sorry, I thought he was a freshman.
No, it's okay. But here's the deal. He's still young. So I'm in the weight room, and I'm just like, I don't know these guys, right? But I know dudes. I know dogs. And I'm just like, dude, what grade is this guy in, right? Like, oh, he's a sophomore. I'm like, damn. He carries himself in a way like 𝗟𝗡𝗩𝗘 does. And that's the culture of that room. Why also 𝗟𝗡𝗩𝗘 stayed? Because he wants to leave it better than he found it. But that's just part of it, right? So those are called mental reps, things that we talk about all the time. I'm trying to articulate to this, to my high schooler, to my junior high, of what does that actually look like? Like in the game of baseball, that's working on, hey, what's the pitcher's release? I'm watching before I even get out there. I'm watching what that off-speed looks like. So he's going to spike in the dirt and I go get myself a bag. Or, hey, you guys aren't walking. Like, hey, parents, guess what? Development is not in the game. Development is at practice. So guess what? Coaches, make sure when you have the guys that are back there lined up, not in the game, not giving scout team looks or not getting reps, you're coaching what's going on. So when they go in there, they can execute. And when they are in there, you continue to coach. And that's just been something that they've been doing for a long time at Ohio State. It's just another testament to that. And when you talk about the juice, I read a great book, Bob. The book of Seth. The book of Seth, chapter 5, verse 13.
Old Testament,
thou shalt run the damn ball. And that's what the Buckeyes did. That also goes back to the culture. So right there in the midst of all that, you really talked about Ohio State's culture. But it also says, guess what? It takes a little bit of time, Bob. Right? These moments, but the coaches have confidence. Think about the journey of Carson Hintzman from last year to now. Think about the journey of Brandon Ennis from last year to now coming into the program. Think about 𝗟𝗡𝗩𝗘 and his situation and where he is. Think about Will Howard, all these different pieces of the puzzle coming together. It's not just going to happen and like poof, David Copperfield, like we want, like even they may expect it to, right? Because of things that were said at the beginning of the year, but just so happened in this game, they all started to come to fruition, and guys see that, they feel it, they grow from it, and then now each week has to be built upon that last week when you figured it out. And that, to your point, Bob, is now on the leaders of this team to make sure that that is the standard. That is how inside looks. This is how 7-on-7 looks. This is how your preparation for big games, or any game for that matter, because every game is a big game at Ohio State. This is how that looks. That is the standard. And to your point, part of the saturation of the program in January, and one of my good buddies from Northwestern, RIP, Joe Roscoe, used to say, if you're juiceless, you're useless. Sometimes you got to manufacture that, right? Just with my presence, I might not feel it, but I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock. I had to train 30 baseball kids. I'm gassed. I'm tired. I've been traveling, doing shows, doing work. Boom, I'm in there. It's my energy. I'm going to infect you. If you need a little bit of dose of this, boom, you're ready, right? But then we get into the room and now the energy kicks up. That's what leaders have to do in the program. And it's better done when it's done by the players and not by the coaches. And we're starting to see that.
It's starting to happen. And everybody wants it to always be like right away. And ideally, Schlegel, that's what you want. And that would be tremendous. But it doesn't always work like that. And that's what's kind of tough for people to understand is sometimes this thing that's a team, it's organic, it's its own entity, it's its own life form, its own life force. There's its own energy around it. And trying to like figure that out and balance ultimately what it is tough. And so it grows. And all of a sudden you see somebody step up and make a play, or somebody says something, or somebody takes charge. The next thing you know, that kind of becomes who they are. But they've got to take that first initial step. You know, Schlegel, to move the world, you must first move yourself. Seneca, Winner's Manual.
And I would say this too, Bob. Like, the beautiful thing is that we've seen the defense, mature. I'm going to take the Aura game out of it, but there's still bits and pieces of that Aura game. I've thought our team has played week in and week out very, very hard.
What game is that?
The Oregon game.
So you said pronounce the
Oregon.
G.
Oregon. Yeah, or Oregon. All right, whatever you want to call it, salmon and salmon, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's still the same game. Okay, so here's the thing, though. You look at the Nebraska game, goal line stand. They talk about, man, if you give us an inch, we're going to protect it. But it's also that mindset. Like, how do you when you're talking about juice, Bob? Like, this is how I talk about juice all the time. Hey, listen, there's a party at the ball, and everybody's invited. Let's go. Right? Like, just that mindset. Like, I want to go make the play while doing my job. There's a party at the ball. Whether that's an inside drill, whether that's a sack, whether that's Denzel and they're doing this stuff, right? There was like a great coverage on one I saw from Zach Smith, and guys were just like, like Denzel and IGB, they're doing stuff. I don't even know what dances are, right? I don't even know what's going on, but they're having fun. They're having fun together. That's how you bring the juice. There's a party at the ball, and everybody's invited. Let's freaking go. Silver bullets.
We got some good stuff. So I want to talk a little bit before we move on to that Purdue game. How big that game was, and then struggling versus the top five, and then ultimately what that looked like afterwards. We got a huge show today, as I mentioned. We got our headlines. We'll get back to some tailgate talk. We got some more of your questions and comments we want to hammer out there. And then as well, we're going to have our guy Ben Stevens on to make you a smarter football consumer this weekend. All that's coming up here next. But first, let's tell you about Export Mouth Guards. Attention, parents, athletes, protect what matters most with Export Guards, trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export Mouth Guards are scientifically tested to absorb high-impact hits to protect your teeth and your brain. Export Guards, they've got 3 layers of advanced protection, including the patented use of carbon fiber that they 3D print right to your grill there for maximum protection, maximum performance, better comfort, clear communication. You feel great with all of it. So you can focus on the game, not on your gear. Don't take a chance with your safety. ExportGuards.com. You save 15% when you use promo code Bobby. That's ExportGuards/Bobby. Export, protect what matters most. More of the Bobby Carpenter Show coming up next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And Ohio State's going to Purdue this week. So not a huge game, but going into last week's game at this time, the nerves were abundant. And people started talking about Ryan Day and James Franklin, kind of both of them, their inability to win the big game. And, Ryan had struggled some, as we can toss that up there, Pat, especially, he said, top 5, he was 2-7, top 10, he was, I think, 8-7. So is there a difference between being 4th and 6th? I mean, in this records, yeah, that makes a difference. James Franklin, 1-13. Look at points per game. Ohio State was scoring the ball, but they were giving up more. Penn State has really struggled in those big games offensively, which, honestly, if you look at the numbers, was proven out. Ohio State turnover margin hasn't been terrible, but it's not positive. Penn State has been atrocious. But if you look at the game, when you win that thing the way that they ultimately did with Ohio State, like those things kind of hold true. And it's pretty amazing, Schlegel, as you saw that, like that's kind of how it was, except for this Buckeye defense stepping up in a big way and finding a way to get stops.
That's what it boils down to. I mean, the offense is the offense. The defense in these games, we saw a little bit of that in the Oregon game. They got to do their part, right? And on all those games, Bob, from my just recent recollection of them, just pulling them out of the old cranium here, were the explosive plays. So you limit the explosive plays, you manage the turnover margin, probably flip that script. Probably 3 of those were against Michigan, of the 2%. So as you look at that, and again, I don't go back and say, well, let's take those out for whatever reason. They're there. The games were played. Explosive plays have been the things that have hampered this defense. And they're starting to get that corrected and figure that out, because there is a fine line of when to be aggressive, when to be conservative. And I think we've seen kind of both in a variety of different instances, going even back to the Georgia game. But for that being said, we just won a big one. And now you're probably going to have another one. So that's it. We just won a big one. Boom. All right. Charge it to win it. Let's go on to the next. Now I'm already on to Purdue. That's just how I think.
Well, and then we can go on next with that, Pat, to like how big that OSU win actually was. And we talked about, obviously it was a top 5 matchup. So that's a big piece. But I didn't realize this. I mean, you go back and have to go in the Wayback Machine. That's what I'm saying. You've played top 10 ranked teams. Like again, a top 5 matchup is pretty tough. And Ohio State, they hadn't had many, but that was their first AP top 5 road win since 2006. That was the Texas game the year after we left, the return trip to Austin. And that's the first AP top 5 conference road win since 1964 at Illinois. Now, last year, you probably don't get a ton of those conference opportunities. Last year, you had one against Michigan. It slipped through your fingers. But going all the way back to Illinois in 64, and even like the road wins in general, 2006. So 18 years. So that, I think, spells out how big of a win that was for Ryan and for the culture of this team and everything that ultimately went into it.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into that. Obviously, when you play in a bowl game, they're not taking that in consideration because I guess you both are on the road. And I just remember
it's a neutral site. It's a neutral site.
So that's not necessarily there. It kind of bodes to, well, how many of the Big Ten teams are getting into the top 5? That's another one to look at, right? That's something that SEC teams would be like, well, there's always a couple of teams in the top 5. And that would be like, well, where is that competition in the Big Ten? And again, I'm just looking at this from the lens. Then also that was trust. So, Urban didn't do that, right? Maybe they were all at home games. And that's another thing, like a stat like this, though it is significant, there's a lot of other underlying variables that go into it, but it doesn't negate the fact that it was a huge top 5 win on the road versus a very good team. And to me, the most impressive thing is not about just a stat. It's about the manner in which you did it. You saw resiliency. You saw it even in the Nebraska game, the ability to go down and then take it 75 yards. In this game, you saw opportunities where you lost the turnover margin. You lost it. But you were able to bounce back. Guys didn't panic. On to the next. Every time we got an opportunity, every time I go out, I got to show out. Defense doing their job, holding Penn State to 3 of 13 on 3rd down. That was critical, something we didn't do in the Oregon game. So those are the testaments, the ability to get a goal line stand, the ability to get a takeaway going into half, the ability to run the football for 5-13 in a 4-minute drill and take the will out of 111,000 people that were there in the stadium. To me, more than any of that, those are the things that speak off the page that will help this team moving forward. Though those stats say huge win, the manner in which they did it signifies a bigger win than that on paper.
And so the last piece of this that I want to get to
Yes.
is the run success rate. And on 3rd and 4th and short, if we could toss that up there, Pat, that'd be tremendous. Because it tells the story. Like we talked about the bigger picture, but like, as you know, it's always the battle within the battles, the little one-on-ones, the situational football to throw it out there. And here's the reality. Like coming into that game, Ohio State had not been great on 3rd and 4th. Ohio State's success rate on 3rd and 4th and short is 65%. The power conference average is almost 74%. And programs with worse success rates in short yardage are not the company OSU prefers to keep. And so you look at 65% there. You got Purdue below you, Maryland, Washington, BYU, Louisville, Arizona, Stanford, Washington State, Cal. Like not teams that are proficient at running the ball, not teams that you would consider tough football teams. And so you take that, and what was the difference in the game, Schlegs? Being able to run the ball off of your own goal line, being able to convert on 3rd downs multiple times. And whether it was Travion, Q, Will Howard a couple times, that was big. And so those numbers change, and then all of a sudden you win a game. And that right there is the story within the story, Schlegs. As you get an inception, you go like 3 layers deep. That's what you ultimately begin to see and extrapolate.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, too, that we saw, and we've seen this, we've all made comments about it. You have a guy and a big-bodied dude in Will Howard on 3rd and 2, just go get the first down, right? Or 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, just go get the first down. That allows you to set up a play action pass if you want to get a little cute, but like go up and just say, we're coming. Can you stop us? And be able to do that and utilize the quarterback in that situation. They did that this last game. The first play of the drive was Will Howard out of the end zone, right? And then we capped it off with Will Howard. And there was a lot of great runs in there by Trey and Q. But ultimately, to me, when you watch that run that we had with Corey Lindsley and all the great centers in Dakota, like it all started with the apex. And that's what you're starting to see right now in Seth McLaughlin here at Ohio State. Run the damn ball, but it starts with you, Seth. And then you brought out Carson Hentzman, you got Tegra, guys working together. And that's really is what has been able to help out a Tegra and a Carson right now at this moment, in my opinion, is the fact that you got a veteran dude in Seth in the middle. You got 2 veteran dudes at the tackle in Donnie and Josh Fryer helping those guys out. And that mentality that they bring, really, really like it. I think this number is going to continue to go up.
Absolutely. All right. We got headlines coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, now we're to our headlines brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, they've got personalized treatment programs that are going to help you with a multitude of needs, whether you're struggling with low energy, weight loss, muscle loss, poor sleep. Affinity, they can help you with all of it. They even got semaglutide for weight loss. They'll pair programs together to fit your needs. So here's what you do. You go to affinitywholehealth.com. They schedule a free consultation. It's easy. You go in there. They work you up with some labs. They figure out a program that's designed to you. You go home, poof, David Copperfield, 2 days, it's shipped to your door, treatments at the house. They make it ultra convenient for you. I've been a patient there for 7 years. I love it. I think 8 years now. It's tremendous. They do a great job for me. And I don't have time to go to the doctor's office all the time. So I go in intermittently to talk to them, make sure everything's aligned, but they can take care of you the way they take care of me and do a great job with it. So go check them out at affinityWholeHealth.com. All right, Schlegs. The guy that we need to figure out what's going on with, worried a little bit about, one of the dominant defensive linemen for Ohio State. And it was a huge difference early in the season when he was in versus when he wasn't. He got nicked up versus Penn State, comes out of the game. He was not in there for the goal line stand. Who was Schlegs taking his spot?
I think, well, our guy K-Mac. I saw K-Mac. I saw Hero was in there.
Yep.
Boom, K-Mac.
Yeah.
Right
Kayvon McDonald is who Schlegs is talking about there, K-Mac. He talked about earlier this week why he wanted to come to Ohio State. He saw Braxton Miller when he was younger, like how sweet he was. He's like, I'm 7, 8, 9 years old, watching that Virginia Tech game. And I believe K-Mac's grandpa is from the southeast side of Columbus. So I'm not mistaken. I've got to confirm on that. I'm almost positive. It's been a while, but he came up and was talking to me about my dad, and I was pumped because K-Mac is from Georgia, I believe, coming up here. Big, big get for the Buckeyes. And now you're seeing him play big. But the guy he was filling in for, and Hero did a great job too. Everybody needs a Hero, Schlegs. We learned that.
Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon, Footloose.
Footloose.
Yeah. I'm gonna
I
start
need a hero.
Let's start calling him Bacon now. But Hero, great dude as well. But Ty Lee, the veteran guy, the big time dude, quick, athletic, everything you want. Little bit worried. They said he could have went in if they would have had another drive. Thankfully, Seth 513 said, run the damn ball. We don't need you, Ty Lee. Stay on the sideline. But Ryan said he's day-to-day. He will be available for the game. Now, I'm hoping he doesn't play. I don't think he needs to play in this game. You want to see him be healthy, maybe get some run against Northwestern, get juiced up for Indiana. But that's a good sign, Schlegs, because he's a veteran presence. He's a big cog in the center of that Ohio State defensive wheel.
Yeah, there's a lot. And the good thing, too, is I think Ryan even alluded to it this week that they've moved Edric Houston.
Which he's going to be great.
Guys, I'm telling you right now, Edric is one of those guys that, again, was not a big proponent of bringing young dudes in, but the guy just got absolutely just like forceful adaptation because of his room and the training of what it means to be a dude and what it means to be a Buckeye. And the amount of weight and just kind of like tenacity that he's like has now compared to when he first came in is night and day. He is going to be a very, very good player here at Ohio State. Yeah, but again, to Tyleek, hey, it's one of those things, right? This is the beauty of having depth. When we also talk about the portal and roster management and recruiting, these are all the things now that you have to take in consideration because you can't be thin in the D line. We saw it in this last game, Bob, somebody that everybody else wanted more of. Everybody wanted more of what? Rotation in the interior defensive line and on the perimeter. We saw that a lot of guys get into the game. So again, next man up. And the other thing too, Bob, on this point, it was great to see the dudes on the sideline watching the film and like juicing up K-Mac there for what he did. Like, that's how you step up, dog. Like, that's what you want. Awesome.
Absolutely. And then finally, Schlegs, we talked a lot about, some of the penalties, some of the things that happened out at Oregon. You go through one big moment where it's a road game, matchup game, lots going on, swirling, maybe didn't handle it as well as you would have liked. Next time you get some experience, you go do it again. And the false starts for Ohio State, if you want to throw that up there, what they were able to do, Schlegs, you see the numbers right there of Ohio State false starts, what they looked like against Oregon, what they looked like earlier in the year, than what they looked like against Penn State. 4 in the Oregon game, boom, boom, boom. 0, 2 penalties in the Ohio State on the Ohio State offensive line, or the Ohio State for the whole game. 0 false starts against Penn State in a loud and raucous environment. So you love to see that improvement.
Yeah, part of that is, you took the crowd out the game, right? You got, we always talk about, you got to give the crowd something to be excited for.
Took the crowd out of the game, Schlegs. They gave him 10 points at the beginning, and he got a pick 6.
I know, but no, this is through the totality of the game. I mean, 0 penalties. So again, what does it go back to? They were in that environment in Oregon. It was great. You lost on the road by 1. You learn from it, right? There's the best thing that you could probably tell your kids, right? And we all experience failure, but if there are no losers, the losers are the ones that don't learn from it, right? So you can lose a game and learn, and you're going to be better. I think the Oregon game, yes, they lost, but they learned from it in a variety of different ways, and they've now gotten better.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for the headlines. Coming up next, we got our Tailgate Talk brought to you by Real Truck. Answer your questions coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
Building a home for the people who are worth it. Stepping out, throwing in a line, and dropping the tailgate for a picnic. And finding far-off campsites with the people you're closest to. Upgrade your truck, Jeep, or Bronco with over 1 million parts and accessories. And bring your truck to life. Real Truck.
All right, now we get to our Tailgate Talk brought to you by friends over at Real Truck. They're the #1 brand in accessories for trucks, Broncos, Jeeps. They got it all. You go to realtruck.com. You're going to find some great stuff there. But here's the best part. If you spend $100, they're going to take care of you. Use promo code Bobby at the end. So whether you're buying stuff for a Jeep, a truck, a Bronco, a little bit of everything. Finally just got my brother got the winch together, got that the sweet bumper Schlegs on my Jeep, looking good. I got to get my rear bumper on now. But looking solid. But if you spend $100, they're going to use promo code Bobby at checkout. You're going to get a free Real Truck hat. So a little bit of swag coming back your way. Interior, exterior, they got all the things. And the holidays are coming up. So maybe you use the hat as a gift. Maybe you keep the hat for yourself. Give Real Truck stuff as a gift. It's all there for you. Go check them out at realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs, got some comments from yesterday's show. One of the comments coming out from JRS_rankings. Great show, guys. Urban said this team has the toughness to win it all. Do you guys have any stories about when you played where something happened in practice or in a game that made you know your team was tough?
Go ahead, Bob.
I thought, okay, Schlegs, I read the question. I was going to give you the.
Well, you know what? I would say this. There was a moment. It's funny. It involves you, Bob, and it involves me. So. I think it's 2005. No, it's 2005.
When you yelled at Coach Haycock and he made you do up downs.
Oh my God, this is crazy. Anyways, so hey, in this moment, guys. Okay, so we're going against the offense, and here's Bob being an absolute a-hole, and we're doing situational stuff, highly competitive because why? You got Troy, you got Pit Dog, you got Antonio, and you got I'm just missing everybody now. Teddy, and you got Gonzo, and you got him. Like, you got all the guys, right? And there's Rob Sims and all of our dudes, right? Mangold. And Bob's like, we absolutely are stuffing them. And then we're running some kind of exotic stuff, And we're all of us collectively. Bob's walking the ball back. Like, that's not the down and distance trust. Give them what they earn, and they earn nothing. They earn nothing, right? So Bob keeps marking it back. Treston's like chirping back at Bob in a very monotone voice, like, Bobby, that's just work the drill. Bob's going absolutely crazy. I'm just like, hey, field 8, we'll beat your ass all day, just running base. Like, just, and everybody's kind of chirping it, and then poof, David Copperfield, I get pulled out of there. And then Haycock makes me do 400 yards of up down. So every 5 yards, 4 times. And I'm 250 pounds. I'm fat as hell. Okay. So I'm doing that. I might as well get a nose guard. This was 04. This was like the turning point. This was the turning point of the 04 season that went into the 05 season when we made a little bit of run at the end there. And it started to flip the script as to what we were. Anyways, he just makes me go do up downs. I do them as fast as I can so I can get back in. And then I end up getting back in. But it was kind of that moment, like the chippiness, like, no, we want it, like, we're here, we can do this, like that attitude, and it was a collective, right? Like AJ's just laughing at you, right? And then all like Don, like everybody else is chirping, and we're saying this, and of course I get singled out, and then he's like, yeah, I singled you out because I know that you can handle. This is what he told me, like, to my face. Hey, because I went into him like, hey, bro, like, he's like, listen, here, time out. I singled you out because I know you wouldn't talk back to me, and you would just go do that because you knew there's a bigger picture. And so I was like, but hey, was 400 yards necessary? Like, I could have just done 2. He's like, no, I had to make it terrible. I was like, okay, fair enough. So I did it. But like, that was the thing, because everybody could be coached hard by Coach Haycock. That was kind of the point. But our defense just, it became that attitude that you're seeing this defense have, where it's like, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do. Like, let's go, let's compete, let's be physical. Beautiful.
Well, that's basically all the time we have. That's a great story. It's one that I was thinking about with you. We got a couple more. We'll leak those out throughout the rest of the season and throughout the show. So we appreciate it. That was Tailgate Talk, brought to you by Real Truck. We got our Ben Stevens waiting in the queue. He's gassed up. He's greased up. He's had about 4 pots of coffee. He's going to give you everything you need to know to whet your beak to make you a smarter football consumer this weekend here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And on Thursdays, it's Thursdays with Ben, Mr. Ben Scott Stevens of Sports Grid Radio. Give him a follow on X at Ben Scott Stevens. Sorry for making you wait, Ben. Schlegel gets carried away with some of his stories there. Get a little crazy, and it reminds me that he's as crazy as always. So appreciate your time here today, sir. I know you're gassed up and ready. Big weekend in college football. Maybe not the biggest game, but we'll start with Ohio State welcoming in the Boilermakers. Some people call them the spoiler makers. It's a 38-point line. It's pretty stinking robust there. How do we feel about that? And is there anything in this game that you do like?
Yeah, Bobby, it is really interesting, right? Because some of that spoiler maker lore has left with Jeff Brom. We all know what Purdue can do against AP top 5 opponents. That predates Jeff Brom, by the way. 17 wins against the AP top 5, the most in the modern era since the AP poll was introduced back in 1936. But this year, Purdue is a 1-7 football team with that one win against an FCS foe, Indiana State, in their opener. They have not won a game against an FBS program. They have been booked as an underdog in 6 of those 7 games against an FBS program. And they are 1-5 against the spread this year as an underdog. Under Ryan Walters, they are just 5-10 ATS as an underdog since the beginning of last season. So the spoiler maker lore, not really there for this weekend against Ohio State. Now, it's not necessarily about the Buckeyes just avoiding an outright upset against Purdue. It's a very, very large spread. Here's one of the things that I think is most important for Ohio State in this matchup. If Purdue scores a point, everybody's pulling a Schlegel and doing up-downs all day long because this Purdue offense is not great. And when you look at some of the numbers for Ohio State this year, now 5 conference games, Ohio State a favorite in all 5. They have covered in 3. In those 3 covers, every game has stayed under. In fact, under in every Big Ten game, except for that one against Oregon. But in the 3 games they have covered as the favorite, where the total has stayed under, they allowed just 27 points. They gave up 49 combined in their 2 non-covers against Nebraska and Oregon. If Purdue gets over a touchdown, I would be absolutely shocked. If Purdue gets over a field goal, I would be mildly surprised. If Purdue gets shut out, I would not actually be all that surprised for Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes defensively show their might on Saturday. That's how they win comfortably.
Well, I'm going to stay with the Big Ten, Ben, because everybody now after the Penn State game, yes, we have Purdue. Yes, we have Northwestern. Indiana hosts Michigan. And we've talked about the brands and where they're ranked right now. If it was anybody else, they would be up there in the top 5.
Correct.
But now they got Michigan coming in. Tell us about this game.
Yeah, Schlegel, you're completely spot on, right? Indiana with a bigger brand is probably ranked top 10 in the preseason. Thus, Indiana would be higher than 8 in the first college football playoff rankings. I'm not overly concerned with that for IU, because the one criticism that I think even Hoosiers fans would admit, the strength of schedule is not great. What they are doing to that schedule should be appreciated and impress everybody in the country, but that's going to be a metric that hinders their ranking, at least to start. You know what happens to that strength of schedule metric? It changes greatly in these final 3 weeks. It's 103rd right now. It's 13th in their final 3 games because they have Michigan and Ohio State, and they end the year with that Purdue team that I kind of just slandered out of West Lafayette, but it's basketball season for the Boilermakers. Either way, for Indiana, what they have done this year, the numbers should blow your mind, and Schlegel, maybe they will here. They are a perfect 9-0 to start a season for the first time in the 137 years of Indiana football. And in those 9 games, they have been booked as a favorite in every one. They have covered in 8. The only non-cover for IU was way back in week number 1 against FIU when they won by 24 as a 24.5-point favorite. Their cover margin, right? So against these bad teams where Indiana is laying 7.5 points, 10.5 points, 13.5 points, non-conference games against Charlotte and the such, 20-plus points, 3 touchdown spreads. Their cover margin based on expected multiple score wins is 17.3 points per game. The only team in the country that has a cover margin north of 2 touchdowns. Indiana has a victory margin of nearly 33 points per game. I say all of that to not discredit the Hoosiers. And this is the first time that IU is favored in a football game to beat Michigan since 1968. Indiana is going to beat Michigan on Saturday. If you look at this Michigan team, they are nowhere even close to the reigning national champs. The defense is so much worse. The offense is atrocious. Second worst total offense in all of the Big Ten. And where is Indiana? Not just a powerhouse in terms of putting up points, also really elite in stopping the run. In fact, they are the most elite in college football. The Hoosiers are the best rushing defense in all of CFB. And that's all the Wolverines can basically do at this point. Now, 13.5 seems a little bit lofty. I know a lot of people are starting to buy back in on Michigan. I think Indiana wins this game by double digits. They've won all of their 9 previous by 14-plus points. But my favorite bet is Curtis Rourke over his passing touchdowns prop. It should be 2.5. It's going to be a little bit of plus money when that number comes out. He has thrown for at least 3 passing touchdowns in the 4 fully healthy games he has played in the Big Ten. And Michigan's pass defense, once elite, is the opposite of that this season. Curtis Rourke over 2.5 passing TDs.
I like that. I like it right there. I want to head down to the SEC, heading over to Oxford and what might be Lane's last stand. If the Ole Miss loses a third, they're probably out of the CFP race, Ben. They got Georgia coming in. Pretty tight line in this. I know it's in Oxford, Georgia. I'm seeing -2.5. Anything you like out of this one?
You know what I think is fascinating, Bobby, is this line I think should be more, not 7 in favor of Georgia on the road in the Grove against Ole Miss, but probably 3.5, 4, 4.5. The fact it's under a field goal feels a little bit trappy and fishy in a way to me. A lot of the criticism that we give to James Franklin and Ryan Day entering the game last week in State College can also be thrust onto Lane Kiffin. He is just 10-20 straight up in his head coaching career against ranked foes. He is 7-9, better at Ole Miss, but just 7-9. They were favored to beat LSU this season. They lost outright in that game on the road in Baton Rouge. This game's at home. But Georgia has played 56 football games since the middle portion of the 2020 season. They have won 53 of 56, with all 3 losses against the same program. Alabama, 2 of those 3 losses in the SEC championship game. Until Georgia loses to a team not named Alabama, I am going to continue to believe that Georgia is the better of said 2 football teams. So although it feels a little bit peculiar, I would lay 2.5 with Georgia in this spot because the number is less than a field goal. Last week, I was hyping up the under in Ole Miss's game against Arkansas. Boy, was I wrong. I still think we see 2 elite defenses out there because Ole Miss is that. The Run and Rebs metrics this year on the defensive side of the football, sensational. And we always expect offense and points with Lane Kiffin. 14 of 22 games for the Rebels since the beginning of last season. Under 13 of 21 games for Georgia since the start of 2021 against ranked foes where the defense needs to stand tall. Also under. I lean slightly under 54 and a hook on Saturday in Oxford.
Well, Well, you got another big one, SEC country, like basically an elimination game.
Yeah.
Alabama going to LSU. What do you have on this one? Because this is huge.
Yeah, Schlegel, we've seen this similar spot for the Bayou Bengals already once this year. It was that Ole Miss game. The first lead LSU took in that game was in overtime to win it on a Garrett Nussmeier pass to Kyron Lacey. But LSU at home in night games inside Tiger Stadium, it's not just this year or last year, the Brian Kelly era or whatever. It has been always since 1960. With Brian Kelly as a home underdog, they are 3-1 straight up in those 4 instances. They already won outright this year. With Brian Kelly just overall in night home games since the beginning of 2022, they're a perfect 12-0 dating back to 1960. LSU's record is 243, 61-4 in night home games in Baton Rouge. That is a win percentage at 79%. Can Alabama look like what we saw against Missouri, an elite defense that had been anything but bottom 5 in pretty much every major stat category entering that game against Mizzou? And can Jalen Milroe do to LSU's defense what Marcel Reed did in the second half? 9 carries, 62 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Milroe has 12 rushing touchdowns this year. He has scored in every game but the loss on Rocky Top to Tennessee. He had 11 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown in the most recent game for Bama against Missouri now 2 weeks ago. If Alabama can keep him upright, because LSU gets after the quarterback, 28 sacks, and I hate betting rushing yards props for a quarterback against a good team that can sack and bring you down from behind the line because it works against you in college football, not the NFL. I think Jalen Milroe poses a threat to this LSU defense that still has some issues, as we saw exposed by Marcel Reed. Much better entering the A&M game, but when push came to shove, they struggled. I don't know if I'm going to lay 2.5 with Alabama in this game, knowing how good LSU is at home in these night game atmospheres. I would target Jalen Milroe and his rushing yards prop. Saw it last at 48.5. I would bet the over. The only thing that scares is if LSU gets to him, it takes away again from that rushing yards output.
Yeah, that does. It's the one flaw in the college football, rushing system of how they measure it, because those sacks come off. Last one we'll get to here, Ben. A nice 10-15 ESPN kick. The Holy War, BYU trying to stay undefeated and secure that Big 12 conference championship. Haven't won in Salt Lake since 2006. Utah is struggling mightily on offense. About a minute and a half here. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, mightily on offense for Utah. It's why the total is so low. And BYU continues to defy the odds. I still think BYU wins this football game, but in a disastrous season for the Utes, one where they entered the Big 12 as the favorites this year, this is it. This is their Super Bowl. It is the 102nd playing of the Holy War, the first back in a conference as conference foes since the early 2010s. Utah is going to make this game ugly. That is the only way to a cover if it stays under. And the Utes defense, despite how porous the offense has been, is elite. When you look at the elite red zone defenses in the country, it's Ohio State and it's Utah on the power conference level. I'm not going to have a bet in this game because it feels like it's too ugly to even bet. If I had to lean with it, though, we need to make up some ground late on Saturday. We're probably going to target it under.
All right, chasing is the favorite thing. It's your favorite sport, Ben. Late at night, 10-15, maybe get a second half number for you there. Try to catch up on some of those losses. Sir, we appreciate it. Thank you for spending some time with us, as always, on Thursdays.
Always, guys. Appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
See you, man.
Ben Scott Stevens, one of the best. Follow him on sport. Give him a follow on Twitter. Ben Scott Stevens, Sports Grid Radio on SiriusXM, does a great job blowing Schleg's mind each and every week. All right, Schleg's going to wrap the show. Coming up here next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer. All right, Schlegels, you got the.
How much time?
You got as much. Really, Schlegels, I mean, I'm on you. As much time as you need.
Now I'm only gonna take 30 seconds, and I'm gonna do it this way. Hey, you know what? Just got beat in the semifinals, junior high football, and we talked about it earlier on the show. There's losers and there's learners, and I challenge all you parents as you switch over from season to potentially another season, which you should. All kids should play multiple sports. Sit down and have a talk and say, what did you learn? What did you learn from your team? What did you learn about you individually? What are your goals moving forward? And then help that assist that. And also, when you transition from one sport to another, make sure you give them a little bit of time to be a kid, because then when it's go time to go be in that sport, we're all in to that sport. It's okay, parents, to be all in. I'm telling you right now, played 3 sports my entire life going into high school. It's good for them.
I love it. Well, that's it for today. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be back here getting ready to preview the Purdue game as the Buckeyes try to get one more win on their quest back to Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship. So check us out tomorrow here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.